All right, so today we're going to be looking into Peaq and this whole world of decentralized infrastructure. We've got a pretty in-depth research report here, um, but we're going to break it down, make it a little bit more fun and exciting, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
This idea of DePIN,
DePIN.
decentralized physical infrastructure networks, it's pretty interesting.
So what's DePIN all about?
It's kind of like shifting from owning things to owning access. So like instead of owning a power plant,
Right.
you would own access to the energy that it produces.
Gotcha.
So think like a community-owned solar grid, or maybe even a network of self-driving taxis that are run by the drivers themselves.
Okay, so less about I own this thing and more about we all have a stake in this thing working and keeping the lights on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, the report says that the market for this could hit like $3.5 trillion by 2028. Is that even realistic?
I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's not totally out there.
Okay.
You know, we're seeing a lot of trends converging right now. People are kind of tired of centralized control over these essential services,
Right.
like energy and transportation.
Yeah.
They want more transparency. They want to see things be more fair. And the technology is finally getting to a point where it can actually make all this possible.
Yeah.
And I think there's also this growing awareness that like traditional infrastructure just isn't cutting it anymore.
Especially with climate change.
Yeah, definitely. Like we need new solutions.
All right, so how does Peaq fit into all of this?
So Peaq is a blockchain.
Right.
And it was designed specifically for building these DePINs.
Okay.
It's like the foundation for all these decentralized networks.
So-
One of the really impressive things about Peaq is it can handle a ton of transactions really fast and super cheap. We're talking like over 10,000 transactions per second
Wow.
at a fraction of a cent per transaction.
Jeez.
So you imagine like you're sharing your Wi-Fi with your neighbors
Okay.
and you get paid like a tiny fraction of a penny every time they use it.
Right.
Like that's the level of microtransaction that we're talking about here.
So super efficient.
Yeah.
But what about the whole environmental impact? Because blockchain has a reputation for being kind of an energy hog, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. But Peaq actually addressed this head on.
Oh, okay.
They did away with that energy-intensive mining process that a lot of other blockchains use,
Right.
and they went with something called nominated proof of stake.
Nominated proof of stake.
Yeah, it's much more energy efficient, so it aligns with the need for sustainable solutions.
Okay, so Peaq is fast, cheap, and green. That all sounds good in theory, but what does this actually look like in the real world?
Well, the applications are pretty wild. Take electric cars, for instance. With Peaq, you could have peer-to-peer charging networks, like just popping up everywhere. And these networks would be totally owned and operated by the people who use them.
Okay, so no more hunting for a charging station.
Exactly.
No more worrying about some company jacking up the prices.
No more range anxiety.
Okay, that's pretty cool. The report goes even further, though, talking about like robots and even routers.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about reimagining like the entire fabric of our infrastructure here.
So like what?
You could have things like the Cassie, community-owned robot cafes
Robot cafes.
where the profits go back to the neighborhood,
Wow.
or robots doing like dangerous jobs so humans don't have to.
Right.
And when it comes to routers, you could have communities building their own high-speed internet networks using Peaq,
Right.
finally breaking free from like those big telecom companies.
So it's like taking all those essential services
Yeah.
that we rely on every day and giving the power back to the people.
Exactly.
I like it. Is any of this actually happening, though, or is this all just theoretical?
No, it's already happening.
Really?
Peaq is gaining some serious traction. I mean, they got 17 active DePINs already up and running,
Wow.
like 50 more in development.
That's crazy.
And over 50,000 machines are already connected to the network.
That's impressive.
And the value of these DePINs is already estimated at like $250 million.
$250 million.
Yeah. And projections suggest it could double next year.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So what about the Peaq token? What role does that play in all of this? Because I'm seeing like Peaq Cresta Gung. What's with all the different tokens? Is it just for speculation?
Oh, not at all. Peaq's tokenomics are all about real-world utility.
Okay.
So PQ is the main token used on the network. And then Crest and Agung serve different purposes, like for testing and development.
Okay.
But the important thing is that these tokens aren't just for trading.
Right.
They're actually tools for interacting with the Peaq ecosystem.
Okay, so less about buy low, sell high, more about actually using them to do stuff within the network.
Right.
So what can you actually do with these Peaq tokens?
So you could use them to pay for transaction fees. which are incredibly low, as we talked about.
Right.
You can also use them to vote on how the network is run. So you actually have a say in its development.
Gotcha.
And this is where it gets really interesting. You can earn rewards by supporting the network's operation.
Rewards. Tell me more.
So by participating in things like staking, which is where you basically lock up your tokens to help secure the network.
Okay.
You can earn additional tokens as a reward.
So like an incentive system to get people involved.
Exactly.
Okay.
And machine owners can actually stake tokens to vouch for the reliability of their machines, which helps to build trust within the network.
So it's all about getting everyone involved, making sure the system runs smoothly.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface of Peaq's tokenomics.
Okay.
To really understand the long-term vision. We should talk about the team behind it all.
All right, let's talk about the brains behind this operation then. Who are these people building this DePIN revolution, and what makes them qualified to pull it off?
So the founders of Peaq, they've been in the world of machine communication and like the Internet of Things for a long time, like years. They've been building the tech behind all these connected devices, so they really get it, like the challenges, the potential, the whole thing.
Right.
They saw the limitations of these centralized systems.
Right.
And decided to do something about it.
So they're not just like some blockchain kids who stumbled onto this.
Well, no.
They've got serious experience.
They know their stuff.
Okay, that's good to hear. Though Peaq is still pretty new, right? Are there any like real world examples of this stuff in action, or is it all still potential at this point?
Oh, no. There are some pretty awesome projects already using Peaq. Like Fetch.ai, for example.
Fetch.ai.
Yeah, they're using Peaq to create this decentralized network.
Yeah.
For autonomous delivery robots.
Wait, hold on. Robot deliveries?
Yeah.
Like little R2-D2s bringing me pizza. I'm in.
It's coming.
But how does that even work, like on a decentralized level?
So basically, Fetch.ai uses Peaq to create this network where anyone can contribute their robots to do these deliveries. So it's not owned by one company.
Gotcha.
It's like a collaborative thing where everyone benefits, right?
Yeah.
So imagine like a whole fleet of robots constantly optimizing routes, picking up packages, delivering things.
Super efficient.
Yeah, and because it's decentralized, the profits are shared among all the participants.
That's pretty cool. So it's like the gig economy, but for robots.
Yeah, kinda.
That's awesome. What about this data highway thing I saw in the report?
Oh, yeah, Data Highway. That's another cool project built on Peaq.
What's that all about?
It's about creating a decentralized marketplace for machine data.
Machine data?
Yeah, so right now, all that data generated by our devices.
Right.
It's pretty much all collected and controlled by these big tech companies.
Right. Google knows everything.
Exactly. Data Highway flips that on its head, though.
Okay.
It lets individuals and businesses share and monetize their own data.
So instead of Google knowing everything about my browsing habits, I could actually control that data and even profit from it.
That's
so
right.
Like a big shift in power.
It is. It's about creating a more equitable data economy. So imagine a world where, like, small businesses have access to the same data insights as these giant corporations.
Leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, you've convinced me. DePINs sound pretty amazing, but there's got to be some downsides, right? Like, what are the risks? What are the challenges with this whole decentralized infrastructure thing?
Well, like any new tech, DePINs face hurdles. Scalability is a big one.
Okay.
Can these decentralized networks handle the massive amounts of data and transactions when we've got this world that's getting more connected every day?
That's a good point. And we talked about how Peaq can handle a lot of transactions. But scaling that up to a global level, that's a whole other ballgame.
Right.
What about security? These decentralized networks are spread out across all these different nodes. Doesn't that make them vulnerable to attacks?
Security is definitely a big concern, and it's something the Peaq team is super focused on.
Okay.
Peaq is actually built on Polkadot.
Polkadot.
Which is known for having really robust security features.
So it's like building on a strong foundation. But even with that, isn't there still a risk? We're talking about critical infrastructure here, like energy grids, transportation systems. What if something goes wrong?
Well, that's where the community comes in.
Yeah.
Peaq is open source,
right,
which means you've got developers all over the world looking at the code, finding vulnerabilities, making it more secure.
So it's a collective effort.
Yeah, it really is.
To make this thing work.
Yeah.
Okay. But how does all of this affect, like, the average person? Why should we care about Peaq and DePINs?
It's about taking back ownership of the things that shape our lives.
Right.
Imagine having a say in how your energy is produced,
yeah,
how your data is used, how your community is connected.
All right.
That's the power of DePINs.
So it's about going from just being a consumer to being like an active participant
Yeah,
in building this future.
exactly.
And Peaq is making that possible.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, we're already seeing bits and pieces of this DePIN future. Like, think about ride-sharing apps.
You're right.
Peaq takes that idea and goes even further. It lets the drivers and riders actually own and operate the platform.
Wow.
But it goes way beyond just transportation.
Like what else?
You could have community-owned solar grids
Okay.
where people buy and sell energy from each other,
That's cool.
creating a more sustainable, affordable energy system.
I like that. No more relying on these big energy companies
Right.
and their crazy prices.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's really just the beginning. I mean, Peaq could change healthcare by creating secure platforms for sharing medical data or transform education with these decentralized learning networks that really put students in control.
Wow. This is starting to sound like a sci-fi movie.
I know.
A future where we're not just consumers, but we're actually part of building something better.
Yeah.
Is that really possible, though? Can Peaq actually deliver on all this?
It's a big vision, I'm not going to lie.
Right.
But what gets me excited about a Peaq is how committed the team is.
Yeah.
They're not just talking about it, they're building it.
Okay. So they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly.
All right. I'm on board. Peaq and DePIN sound pretty revolutionary, but before we get too excited, let's talk about the potential risks and challenges. Because let's be real, no technology is perfect. And DePINs are going to face some hurdles along the way. So we've talked about how Peaq could like revolutionize everything, from robot deliveries to energy grids. But let's be real. Are there any downsides to all of this? Like, what could go wrong?
Well, one challenge is going to be making sure that these DePINs are actually decentralized. Not just controlled by like a new set of powerful players.
Right. It wouldn't be much of a revolution if we just end up with a different group of people calling the shots.
Exactly.
So how do we make sure that DePIN stay true to that whole decentralized ideal?
Transparency is going to be huge. And community involvement.
Oh.
The Peaq platform is designed to be open and accessible.
Right.
So anyone can see how it works and they can contribute to its development.
Right.
And because decisions are made through community governance, no single entity can take over.
So it's like checks and balances built into the network itself.
Yeah, exactly.
What about regulation, though? Governments are used to having control over infrastructure.
Yeah.
How are they going to react to this whole DePIN thing?
That's a good question. It's hard to say for sure.
Right.
I mean, some governments might be all about it. They see the innovation, they see the efficiency.
Right.
But others, they might see it as a threat.
Right. A threat to their power.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, it sounds like there could be a bit of a tug of war between the decentralized world of DePINs and the more traditional world of government regulation. But maybe that tension's a good thing, right?
I think so.
Forces everyone to adapt and innovate.
Exactly.
And hopefully come up with some better solutions in the end.
And we can't forget about the people.
Right.
If people want more control over their infrastructure, governments are going to have to listen.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential pitfalls, the regulatory uncertainty. But at the end of the day, what does this all mean for the average person?
It's about taking ownership. It's about having a say in how things are run.
Right.
Imagine a world where you have a direct say in how your energy is produced,
Yeah.
how your data is used, how your community is connected.
Okay.
That's the promise of DePINs.
It's about going from being a passive consumer
Yeah.
to actually being a participant
Exactly.
in building this future.
And platforms like Peaq are making that possible.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored the complexities of decentralized infrastructure, the potential benefits and challenges of DePINs, and the role that Peaq is playing in shaping this whole movement.
I want to leave you with one final thought. Imagine owning a piece of the internet infrastructure in your town.
Okay.
You could have a say in how it's run, make sure the prices are fair, even earn a share of the profits.
Wow. Suddenly DePINs don't seem so abstract anymore.
Right.
It's about bringing ownership and control back to the people.
Exactly.
And with Peaq leading the charge, it feels like that future is within reach.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Peaq and the future of decentralized infrastructure. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.